Throughout history, has the widespread animosity towards the Jewish people been attributed to a divine curse imposed due to their disobedience, spanning from ancient times to the present day? In the Old Testament of the Bible, particularly in the books of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and other prophetic writings, God pronounced curses upon the Israelites due to their disobedience and unfaithfulness. These curses were part of the consequences for turning away from God's commands and embracing idolatry, injustice, and disobedience. Jerusalem, being the center of worship and the heart of Israel, bore the weight of these judgments. The curses pronounced by God were warnings of impending destruction and desolation upon the city and its inhabitants. Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet, conveyed God's message of impending judgment on Jerusalem. In Jeremiah 19:8, the prophet was instructed to smash a clay jar before the people, symbolizing the city's imminent destruction. God's message through Jeremiah warned of the horrors that would befall Jerusalem due to its rebellion. Ezekiel, another prophet, also conveyed prophecies of judgment upon Jerusalem. In Ezekiel 5:8-17, God used the prophet to illustrate the severity of his judgments. The city was depicted as experiencing famine, pestilence, and the sword as a consequence of its disobedience and rebellion against God's laws. God's curses upon Jerusalem included the destruction of the city's walls and buildings, Jeremiah 5:10, the invasion by foreign armies, Jeremiah 6:22-23, famine and scarcity of food, Ezekiel 4:16-17, and the dispersion of its people among nations as captives, Jeremiah 15:4. Jerusalem faced severe destruction and captivity at the hands of various conquering powers, including the Babylonians in 586 BCE, fulfilling the prophecies of doom and devastation pronounced by the prophets. The consequences of disobedience were not limited to Jerusalem alone. The entire nation of Israel faced the repercussions of their rebellion against God's covenant. The curses extended to the land, causing desolation, displacement, and exile for the Israelites. However, amid the messages of judgment, there were also promises of restoration and hope. God, in his mercy, offered a pathway to reconciliation. In passages like Jeremiah 31:31-34 and Ezekiel 36:26-28, God promised a new covenant and restoration for a repentant and contrite Israel. These prophecies of restoration spoke of a future time when God would gather his people again, renew their hearts, and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. The books of Nehemiah and Ezra depict a partial fulfillment of these promises as the Israelites returned from exile and began the process of rebuilding Jerusalem. Ultimately, the curses upon Jerusalem and the Israelites serve as a sobering reminder of the consequences of turning away from God's commands. They also reveal God's justice, his faithfulness to his covenant, and his willingness to forgive and restore those who repent and turn back to him.